At my son's wedding, an unexpected truth was revealed. A heartwarming transformation awaits. The sun was shining brightly on Ethan's wedding day, casting beams of hope and joy over the small town of Cedar Hollow. The air buzzed with excitement, but for Jake, a hardworking mechanic, the day felt heavy. Memories of years spent pouring every ounce of his love and sweat into building a life for his son crashed against an incoming storm. His estranged father, a man who wielded wealth like a weapon, had decided to show up. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a battlefield. Ethan stood at the altar, wide-eyed and blissful. But amidst the sweet ceremony, the whispers began. Did you hear? Jake never even graduated high school. That car shop, it's barely making ends meet. Jake's heart sank as the judgment rippled through the crowd like a dark wave. He swallowed hard, fighting back the swell of resentment and pain. He had always been the steady hand, the one his son could rely on, but today, that image felt overshadowed by the figure of his father, striding in like a ghost of affluence. Yet, behind that facade of confidence, Ethan felt his own turmoil. Torn between two worlds, he caught glimpses of his grandfather, the man he'd heard stories about but had never truly known. Would family bonds sway him toward a legacy of wealth or embody the love Jake had given? The tension between grandfather and son filled the air like smoke between fireworks waiting to explode. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the reception began, laughter erupted. The clinking of glasses echoed through the room, but Jake sensed a rising tide of discomfort, a prelude to an impending clash. It was at that moment that the tide began to turn. Guests began sharing stories, and a few soulful hearts used the microphone to reminisce about a disastrous flood years ago that had displaced many families. They spoke of how Jake had worked tirelessly, day and night, to help rebuild what the storm destroyed, fixing cars, offering free labor, and rallying the town together in an incredible show of solidarity. Suddenly, the very people who had whispered judgments in hushed tones began to uplift him. Jake saved my home. One neighbor declared, tears shining in the corners of his eyes. One by one, voices grew louder, recounting the neglected sacrifices of the mechanic who stood quietly, allowing his humility to overshadow the praises he truly deserved, but within that joy simmered a confrontation. Jake could feel his father's eyes on him, judging, simmering with unspoken anger and disappointment. The night air was thick with an unyielding division. It was time. Jake squared his shoulders and faced his father, ready to demand the acknowledgement he had longed for. The music faded, and silence cloaked the room. What would it take to bridge this gap of misunderstanding? Love, respect, or perhaps an understanding of what it really meant to be successful? The atmosphere crackled with tension as they stood there, caught in a moment of vulnerability. Would they cling to pain or dare to let go? Night fell over Cedar Hollow, and the wedding cake, a symbol of unity, stood majestic yet watchful, waiting to see if the bonds of family could be overcome, or if once again, hearts would be left fractured and longing. The silence hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating yet electric with possibility. Jake's heart raced as he held his father's gaze, a storm brewing behind the elder man's carefully crafted facade. He felt as if the weight of the entire room rested on his shoulders, but in that moment of confrontation, something deep within him blossomed, an urge to break free from the shackles of resentment he had carried for years. Ethan, caught in the crossfire, shifted nervously on his feet. His wedding day had been so bright, yet here it was, turning into a chess match between past and present. He took a breath, his mind swirling with confusion and frustration, but also with a flicker of hope. He wanted this moment to be about love, about the future, not a war of words between the men he cared about most. Jake broke the silence, his voice steady but filled with raw emotion. I never wanted your approval, Dad. But I wanted you to see who I am. To see what I've built. His words echoed in the stillness, a challenge and an invitation all at once. Would his father step out of the shadows? The tension was palpable as his father, John, took a deep breath, surprised by the weight of Jake's declaration. For a split second, Jake noticed the flicker of something in his father's eyes. Was it regret, or just shock? But before John could respond, he turned away, retreating back into the protective bubble that money and status provided. "Dad, don't walk away from this," Jake pleaded, the anguish spilling from his heart. "You think success means a big house and fancy cars. But real success is being here for each other. It's what I've given to Ethan every day." The crowd shifted, whispers catching in the air, eyes darting between the three of them, all holding their collective breath. Just then, a familiar voice broke the tension. It was one of Jake's oldest friends, Mark, who had risen from his seat, his eyes filled with steel determination. "Jake's right," he said, voice ringing bold and clear. "He's worked harder for this town than any rich man ever could. He's a man of the people. That's the legacy worth celebrating." The crowd erupted, voices rising in support. Cheers and applause surrounded Jake like warm sunlight breaking through clouds. It was a wave of affirmation he had not expected, yet desperately needed. Ethan smiled, a mixture of pride and relief washing over him as he saw his father stand resilient, entwined in this beautiful tapestry of community. Jake turned back to his father, heart pounding in his chest. "I know you think I'm not enough. That I haven't measured up. But I have given everything for my family. I've built a life, not just for Ethan, but for this town. You can't buy that." John's expression hardened before softening again, confusion etching lines deep in his brow. Jake could see the strain of years lost, of hope dimmed by pride. This was the moment, the opening Jake had long awaited. "Are you proud of me, Dad? Or are you still trapped in a world where love is a currency you never earned?" The question hung in the air, a lifeline tossed into murky waters. As John's gaze briefly faltered, the door creaked slowly open from behind him. A woman stepped into the light, an unexpected visitor, a face that would complicate everything Jake thought he knew. The laughter faded as shock rippled through the guests. What is she doing here? Jake thought, panic rising within him. Would this unravel everything they had begun to piece together? The night held its breath, waiting for a response. What road would they embark on now, tangled in this web of family ties and unspoken truths? The tension in the air shifted, a hard gust blowing through the uneasy silence as the woman stepped fully into the room. Her presence jolted Jake back into a whirlwind of memories he had long since buried. Years had passed since he last saw Sarah. The familiar sparkle in her eyes, a mixture of determination and vulnerability, sent a jolt through him. "Sarah," he whispered, almost in disbelief. The guests murmured among themselves, unsure if her appearance was a blessing or a curse. Jake's heart raced. The last person he expected to unravel this fragile moment was the mother he had always resented for leaving. John turned, brow furrowed, a myriad of emotions flickering across his face. "What are you doing here?" he asked, the bite in his tone betraying the affection the family once shared. "I had to come," Sarah said, stepping forward, her voice steady yet pleading. "I wanted to see my son on the day he starts a new chapter." Her gaze swept around the room, landing on Ethan. "And I owe his family the truth." Jake felt a growing pit in his stomach. What truth could she possibly share now? He fought to maintain composure, battling years of resentment and confusion. "The truth? You think you can just waltz in here and justify yourself?" He fired back, his voice louder than intended. Ethan, caught in the storm, stepped between them. "Jake, don't. Maybe we should listen to her." His voice was soft, but firm, demonstrating wisdom beyond his years. Sarah took a deep breath, connecting her eyes with her son. "I left because I thought I was protecting you. I was scared of what your father and I were becoming. But I see now that leaving was a mistake." John snorted, a bitter laugh that echoed in the room. "You think this is about you? This is Jake's day, not a chance for you to rewrite history." Jake's heart thudded in his chest to a chaotic rhythm, torn between anger and curiosity. He hadn't expected this confrontation. It felt like two fires igniting all at once. Was this the moment to confront his own feelings about her abandonment? I'm not here to hurt you, Sarah pressed on, voice shaking slightly. I've watched from a distance and wanted to be part of your life again. I realize now that I made a choice that took me away from my family. All you need to hear from me today is that I love you, always. The room held its breath again, the heaviness of emotions mixing with the echoes of her confession. Jake felt tears prick at his eyes, confusion swirled within him, threatening to choke him up. This was how the story was supposed to go. You think love makes up for years of silence? He challenged, but his voice was softer, cracking under the weight of the years he had carried alone. Yes, Sarah replied simply. But love also requires truth. The crowd shifted, sensing the emotional upheaval erupting in the air. Gasps of surprise mixed with nervously whispered comments danced around them. Each gaze felt like a spectator to this personal unraveling, but the warmth of earlier support began flickering, returning. Ethan reached for Jake's arm, steadying him. You're not alone in this. Whatever happens next, I'm here. The gentle grip anchored Jake, pulling him back from the edge. Jake turned back to face his mother, feeling a swell of emotions: fear, longing, and the faintest glimmer of hope. What if this was the chance to rebuild? A step toward understanding or healing, despite the chaos, but before he could respond, he saw the raw emotion in his father's eyes, and he hesitated. What unspoken feelings were hidden behind John's hardened exterior? Would his anger clash with the hope that was slowly raising its head? The moment seemed alive with possibility, but Jake knew it could tip in any direction. Could this unexpected truth wrap their fractured family in a new bond, or would it send them spiraling deeper into the past? As Jake opened his mouth to speak, the door swung wide again, and another surprise walked in, one that threatened to complicate the fragile moment even more. What new revelation awaited them now? The door swung open slowly, almost as if it were part of a tense movie scene. A tall figure stepped in, catching everyone's attention. His rugged silhouette seemed both familiar and foreign, and the hum of whispers filled the room once more. It was Mark, Jake's estranged brother. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't seen Mark in years filled with disappointment and estrangement. His brother's face was a map of weariness and hardship, yet there was an undeniable softness in his eyes as he took in the scene before him. Jake. Mark's voice broke through the murmurs. It hung in the air, heavy with unprocessed years and pain. What is going on? Jake felt the weight of family secrets crashing down on him like a wave. He was caught in the eye of a storm, two estranged family members stepping back into his life on the same day. Sarah was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark, I didn't expect you to be here. Mark nodded curtly, his gaze darting between his mother and his brother. Neither did I. He turned to Jake, a mix of concern and determination in his expression. I heard there was something happening, and, well, I had to come. I wasn't going to miss this. Ethan shifted nervously near Jake, sensing the growing tension. This is all getting kind of crazy, he murmured, uncertainty flooding his voice. Crazy? No, it's just real, Jake mumbled, feeling trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. He looked back at Sarah, thoughts racing. Her presence stirred a part of him he thought long gone, but Mark's sudden entrance only intensified his confusion. John, arms crossed tightly, glared at Sarah. You're the one who initiated this chaos, and now you're dragging him into it? Let us not do this right now. Sarah's voice rose, filled with the same fire he had seen from her before. We need to have a conversation, all of us. Conversation? Mark's voice echoed with disbelief. Is that really what we're calling this? He stepped forward, eyes narrowing. You all think that just because you're here, after all this time, that things can just be fixed? Like flipping a switch? Jake felt every word sink into him as if it were a dagger that pierced right through his heart. He wanted to jump in, to defend his mother, but his fingers trembled at the thought. I don't even know anymore, he confessed, vulnerability spilling from his voice. Maybe this is a turning point, Ethan suggested, ever the peacemaker. Maybe if we all just talk. Mark interrupted, incredulity thick in his tone. Are you kidding? Talking hasn't helped up until now. The room thickened with tension. Jake felt a knot tightening in his chest, caught between his brother's fiery words and his mother's fragile heart. Each moment seemed to drag, the air heavy with unspoken histories and unresolved pain. "Maybe we're all broken," Sarah finally said, her voice almost a whisper, but it echoed with a raw honesty that stilled the crowd. "But that doesn't mean we can't try. Isn't family worth trying for?" The question lingered in the air, an invitation desperately woven into her plea. Jake's heart raced. Could this be the doorway to healing? Or was it just another glimpse of a mirage in a desert of confusion? As the shadows of doubt whispered in his ear, Jake caught sight of John's expression, a mix of grief and longing. Suddenly, everything felt like it was on the edge of collapse. Could one conversation, even one filled with hurt, truly mend the fractures? Before Jake could voice his thoughts, another knock echoed at the door, shaking the fragile grasp on the moment. A chill ran down his spine. Who else could possibly walk in and complicate this already tense reunion? A new truth awaited them, but at what cost? The knock reverberated through the room, slicing through the thick tension like a knife. Jake's stomach twisted into a knot as he exchanged glances with Sarah and Mark. Mark's brow furrowed, his defiance wavering for a moment, and Sarah shifted her weight from one foot to the other, as if bracing herself for the storm. "Should we see who it is?" Ethan finally whispered, glancing nervously towards the door. Jake found himself frozen. Part of him wanted to dismiss the interruption and focus on the chaos already unfolding. But another part was undeniably curious. What more could possibly happen tonight? As the door slowly opened, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows, Jake's breath stalled. It was Laura, his childhood friend and a person who had always been like family. She stood there, breathless with urgency and wide-eyed with concern. The moment she stepped inside, her gaze fell on Mark. "Mark. I didn't know you were coming," she breathed, her voice trembling slightly. "I heard something was wrong. I just had to be here." "Wrong?" Mark snapped, the old barbs of hurt pushing their way to the surface. "You have no idea." Laura recoiled slightly, taken aback. "No, I suppose I don't," she replied, her composure wavering. "But I know there's a lot of pain here. And you need each other." Jake felt a surge of gratitude towards Laura, and yet, it blended with anxiety. How could they possibly unpack all of this with more voices? "Laura, this isn't a good time," Jake mumbled, his heart racing. He wanted to protect the fragile thread of progress they were barely starting to weave. "No, Jake," she countered gently. "This could be the moment you've all been waiting for. To lay it all out on the table. To confront the past." Mark rolled his eyes, clearly irritated. "You think we can just talk this out? Just like that?" "Talking doesn't have to be easy," Laura said defiantly, stepping further inside, determination shining through her vulnerability. "But it might be worth a try. You can't heal wounds without recognizing they're there first." The room quieted, every eye fixated on Laura's earnest expression. She had an uncanny way of pulling the truth into the light. Jake's heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of fear and hope swirling together. "Please, let us just try." Sarah's voice was soft but filled with desperation. "We owe it to ourselves, to each other. What if sharing our truths might lead us somewhere different?" Silence wrapped around them, heavy and thick. Jake could feel the walls of his heart constricting, as he searched for the right words, but nothing felt adequate for the moment. Memories rushed through him of laughter, anger, times lost and moments missed. "Fine," Mark finally sighed, though his tone was reluctant, like a reluctant soldier agreeing to a truce. "Let us talk. But don't expect it to be easy." "Nothing worthwhile ever is," Laura said, her voice steady, bringing with it a flicker of light into the gloom. Jake felt the weight of years of pain and unspoken words gathering in the air, desperate to be set free. He took a deep breath, ready to plunge into the depths of unresolved chaos. As he prepared to speak, the flicker of hope began to glow within him. Then, just as Jake was about to voice the first truth that had been trapped for so long, his phone buzzed in his pocket, interrupting the fragile moment. It was a message from an unknown number. His fingers hesitated over the screen, but his curiosity pulled him in. "Jake, it's time to know the truth about everything." A sense of dread washed over him. What more could there possibly be? The night was already unraveling in ways he never expected. What awaited them all now was a tangled web of revelations just waiting to surface. And Jake had to decide, was he ready for the truth? Jake's heart raced, every beat echoing his uncertainty. That message sat heavy in his mind, vibrating with the weight of too many what-ifs. He glanced around the room, taking stock of the faces: Mark's hardened expression, Sarah's anxious brow, Laura's steady gaze full of expectation. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was an invitation for everyone to confront their truths. "Are you going to read it?" Ethan asked, his voice threading through the tension. Jake could sense the urgency in Ethan's question, a shared curiosity drawing them all closer. "Maybe it's nothing," Jake tried to shrug off the feeling, but the tension in his throat betrayed him. "Or maybe it's everything," Laura said quietly, her eyes locked on him, encouraging him not to shy away from the unexpected. He felt the weight of the little device in his hand. Brows knit, he opened the message, heart pounding as he read the words again. Suddenly, it felt like they weren't just letters on a screen but a painful reminder of secrets buried deep. "Who's it from?" Mark asked, impatience lacing his voice. "An unknown number," Jake admitted, his feelings twisting and turning, fighting against the rising tide of dread. "It just says, it's time to know the truth about everything." "What truth?" Mark challenged, arms crossed defensively. "What more can we possibly learn that will change anything?" Before Jake could respond, the sound of a police siren pierced the night outside, vibrant and startling. It sent a shiver through them all. The dissonance outside seemed to match the turmoil brewing within their little group. "Let us not let this get out of control," Sarah said, glancing between Jake, Mark, and Laura. "What we really need right now is to start talking." Jake felt paralyzed. Did he dare voice what had been festering inside him? Would it even matter if he did? "Maybe I should," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. "Maybe it's time. Every one of us has held on to too much." Mark hesitated, his shoulders slumping as if the burden he'd been carrying was finally taking its toll. "Fine. I'll go first." There was a moment of silence, thick and suffocating, as if the air in the room held its breath alongside them. Jake felt his heart skip. Would this be the eruption they needed, or would it throw them even deeper into chaos? Mark shifted nervously, opening his mouth and then closing it again. "You know, I didn't just come here for you guys. I came because my parents," his voice cracked, bleeding emotion. "They had their own secrets too." Just then, an insistent knocking at the door echoed through the room again, this time faster and with a sense of urgency. The group froze, a palpable tension lifting their collective gaze towards the entrance. Who could that be now? Jake wondered aloud, a sense of forbidding creeping back in. Laura's eyes widened. Maybe it's someone who knows the truth. As the mystery hovered thick in the air, they exchanged glances filled with both hope and dread. Each moment was charged with possibility. Jake took a bracing breath. Should we let them in? With glances exchanged, they stood on the brink of something monumental. Uncharted emotions and unfinished conversations waited just beyond the door, their very own truths poised to be laid bare. He had to know what awaited them all. Would it be the healing they sought, or would it be an even deeper divide? And just when courage threatened to override uncertainty, the door swung open. The door opened with a creak, revealing a tall figure silhouetted against the dim light spilling from the room. It was a man, disheveled and breathless, a look of urgency etched across his face. The air felt electric as the group took a collective step back, tension taut as a bowstring. "Jake!" he exclaimed, eyes darting around the room before settling on him. "You need to listen. It's important." Jake blinked, recognition dawning. "Dad?" The words slipped from his lips, heavy and mingled with surprise. The last person he expected to see was standing right in front of him, looking frantic. "Get inside, we need to talk," Jake's father insisted, stepping further into the room as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. "Dad, what is going on?" Jake asked, chest tightening. He didn't realize how much he needed this moment until he saw his father's troubled expression. His father glanced at the others, quickly assessing the situation. "Everyone, please, I need to tell Jake something that can't wait." Jake exchanged looks with Laura and Sarah, a whirlwind of concern etched on their faces. Mark stood rigid, his eyes narrowing. "Maybe it's best if you don't enough." Jake snapped, surprising himself. "I have to hear him out." It wasn't just curiosity, it was a flicker of hope he couldn't ignore. With a resigned nod, Mark retreated slightly, crossing his arms over his chest. The atmosphere shifted, both apprehensive and anticipatory. Jake's father took a deep breath, his troubled gaze locking onto Jake. "You're right to question things, son. All these years I've held on to things that I shouldn't have. It's time to set the record straight." "What do you mean?" Jake pressed, confusion mixing with urgency. "Your mother, she wasn't just who you thought she was. There are pieces of our past that you need to understand. Secrets that might explain why you felt out of place." The words hung heavy in the air, a gravitational force pulling their attention. Eyebrows furrowing, Jake struggled to process it. "What secrets?" "I made mistakes, and I shielded you from them. It's time you know the truth that's been haunting me all these years." Tension thickened while the group looked on, easily sensing the shift from mere conversation to confrontation of buried emotions. "Dad, I don't understand." "Just tell me." Jake urged, desperate for clarity. "Your mother had a life before me, before us. A life that came with complications and people," he admitted, his voice faltering. Jake felt a tightening in his chest, almost like a clamp squeezing down. "What people?" The knocking on the door had faded into a distant memory as everyone leaned in, breath held, hearts racing with each "what if" that painted the room. "They're here now, Jake. They've come for you and for the truth." His father's voice trembled slightly, weighed down by the burden of years. The air went still as everyone processed his words. Laura's hands clenched into fists. Mark's jaw tightened. Sarah's eyes widened. "Who are they?" Jake whispered, heart pounding. His father took a step closer, eyes sincere. "People you never knew existed." With a sudden surge of adrenaline, Jake steeled himself. "Then let us not keep them waiting." He felt fear, but also a rush of anticipation. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something that could change everything. As Jake's father opened the door wider, shadows danced at the threshold. They weren't just unveiling the past, they were stepping into the unknown. Who stood waiting just outside? Would they bring chaos or clarity? Jake's heart raced, the moment of truth teetering on the edge of revelation, and the stakes had never felt higher. The door swung open fully, revealing a group cloaked in the lingering twilight. They stood there, their faces obscured by the dim light, but Jake could feel the weight of their stares. His stomach churned as uncertainty flooded his mind. He wanted answers, yet he was terrified of what that truth might bring. "Who are you?" Jake's voice came out steadier than he felt, tinged with a mix of defiance and fear. His father stepped aside, making room for the newcomers. "This is complicated, Jake," he said, a tremor of guilt filtering through his composure. A woman stepped forward, her features becoming clearer in the dim light. She had a familiar softness to her eyes that sent a shiver down Jake's spine. "I'm your aunt, Sarah," she said gently, holding out her hand as if welcoming him into an entirely new reality. "And me?" An older man emerged behind her. He had sharp features, combined with a warmth that somehow felt familiar. "I'm your grandfather." His voice was deep and steady, almost comforting despite the strains of disbelief hanging in the air. Jake felt the room closing in, breaths growing shallow. "My grandfather?" The word tasted unusual on his tongue, mixed with confusion and a hint of bitterness. "Your mother wanted to keep this from you to protect you," his father interrupted, anguish evident in his voice. "But every secret has a way of surfacing. It was never my intention to keep you in the dark." Laura, Sarah, and Mark edged closer, drawn into the shifting undertones of family drama that unfolded in front of them. They were spectators watching Jake's world tilt off its axis. The family is complicated, the older man continued, his presence steadying. There are ties that bind us, unseen threads that have been severed for too long. Your mother, she wanted you to lead a normal life. But there's more to your history, Jake. As he spoke, emotion twisted in Jake's chest, the heart-wrenching pull of family he didn't know he had. Questions swarmed his mind like angry hornets, and he struggled to tame them. Why now? Why have you come back after all this time? His aunt's eyes softened, tears brimming. We tried to respect your mother's wishes. But there are things you need to know, things that aren't safe to ignore any longer. Mark, standing watchful beside Jake, shifted uncomfortably. What are you trying to say? His voice cut through the emotional haze. What's at stake here? Your mother's past, the grandfather replied, slowly weighing his words, is intertwined with certain people. They hold pieces of the puzzle that you need. A silence fell in the room, thick and suffocating. Jake felt the eyes of everyone around him pressing down. He wanted to shout, to push the intruders away, but a part of him ached for connection, for truth. And these people, are they dangerous? Not if you face the truth head-on, his father said, his voice low. But hiding won't protect you forever. Jake swallowed hard, feeling the gravity of the moment sink in. Each breath felt heavier, each heartbeat painfully pressing against his resolve. It was a choice he had to make. Would he step into this new reality, or retreat back to a life crafted from illusions? He took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of his friends beside him, a protective circle against the unknown. All right, he said finally, voice firming up. Let us talk. No more secrets. The group collectively exhaled. Jake caught a glimpse of hope in his father's eyes, a flicker of pride mingling with relief. But before anyone could move forward, a loud knock echoed through the room, sharp and jarring. Who else is at the door? Sarah asked, her voice taut with anxiety. Jake shot a glance toward the entrance. What else is waiting for us? As uncertainty clawed at him, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Jake's heart raced. Each thud of it echoed in his ears like a warning bell. The knock seemed to split time itself, stretching the moment into a taut breath held too long. He turned back to his father, who wore a mask of concern. The rest of the room buzzed like a wasp's nest. Stay close, Mark whispered, inching a bit forward. He didn't want to show it, but fear had crept into his voice too. Maybe it's just someone else from the neighborhood? Laura suggested, her brow furrowed, but even she didn't sound convinced. The door creaked open ever so slightly, revealing a silhouette. It was a figure Jake recognized instinctively. His pulse quickened again, not from fear but shock. His mother. Megan, standing hesitantly in the doorway, her eyes wide and slightly misted. Mom? Jake couldn't help the breath that escaped from his lips. Confusion and disbelief twisted together, leaving a bitter taste. Megan stepped inside, her expression a storm of emotions. Jake, why are you here? The words exploded from him, raw and jagged. You've been gone for how long, and now let her speak, his father interjected softly, putting a hand on Jake's shoulder. She deserves a chance to explain just like everyone else. Megan blinked, her uncertainty wrapped around her like a shroud. In that brief moment, Jake could see every year of absence etched into her face. The night spent wondering became tangible in her presence. He felt like a child longing for comfort but too hurt to accept it. I never wanted to hurt you, Jake, she said, her voice breaking. I thought I was protecting you, but it seems that secret only caused more harm. Protecting me from what? The bitterness dripped from his words. From your family? From the truth? Sarah stepped toward Megan, her hands raised in peace. We've come to help. There are things that Jake needs to know, things he can't ignore anymore. I didn't want to burden him. I kept so many things hidden, Megan's voice trembled. You have the right to know. But it's my fault everything is unraveling now. Jake shook his head. He didn't want to dive into this tumultuous sea of emotions again. This isn't just about you anymore. You've left me in the dark my whole life. Jake, his mother, stepped closer, desperation in her eyes. What happened then is still tied to what's happening now. We're being hunted for things I buried, things that could endanger you and your friends if we don't face them together. Being hunted? Mark echoed incredulously, sharing a glance with Laura that spoke volumes. Megan nodded slowly, her voice becoming steadier as she lifted the veil a bit. There are people, powerful people, that want to silence our family. And they won't stop until they find us. Fear crashed over Jake like a wave, yet deep down, something flickered within him. He had a chance to uncover parts of himself that had been hidden away for too long. Then let us face them together, he said, adrenaline thrumming through him like electricity. The tension in the room shifted, no longer stifling but invigorating. Are you sure, Jake? His father asked, searching his son's face for doubt. Yeah, he replied, resolve carving its way into his expression. I'd rather know the truth than live in shadows. Silence echoed in the room, filled with a different kind of tension, one of hope and possibility. Just as the air began to settle, another knock rapped at the door, more urgent this time, as if demanding entry into their chaos. Megan? Someone called from outside, a voice Jake didn't recognize but felt terrified of anyway. Are you in there? We need to talk. Jake felt the world tilt again. What was waiting behind that door now? And was he truly ready to face it? The door rattled again, urgency snapping through the air like a fiery whip. Jake's heart sprinted in his chest. His mother, Megan, turned to him, eyes wide and filled with both fear and a flicker of something else, determination, perhaps. We have to be ready for anything, she urged quietly. Who is it? Mark demanded, fists clenched at his sides. The tension in the room sang, vibrating with unspoken fears and old wounds. We need to find out, Jake said, a weight settling in his gut, a mixture of dread and resolve. Let us face whatever this is, together. The murmurs swirled, pooling with collective anxiety, but as if drawn by an invisible force, they tightened into a circle around Jake. He looked at the faces that mattered most to him, Sarah, Mark, Laura, his parents, people he never knew he needed so deeply. Hold on, Jake called, stepping toward the door. He nodded at his father, who suddenly brought a new air of authority into the room, and together they braced themselves before the entrance. Whoever you are, we're not afraid, Jake declared, pushing the door open farther. Just beyond it stood a man, tall and imposing with a commanding presence. His eyes, crystal blue and piercing, landed on Megan. There you are, he said, breathless but commanding. We don't have time. They're coming for you. A gasp escaped from the group. The man reached for Megan's arm, but Jake instinctively stepped between them, his muscles coiled tight. What do you want? Jake demanded, voice steady, despite the tremor of fear that rippled underneath. Megan, you need to trust me, the stranger insisted, glancing back toward the street. I'm here to help. Jake's mind raced, battling a mix of uncertainty and the dawning realization that he was potentially standing at the edge of something life-altering. Who are you? He asked again, this time more firmly, with a flicker of protectiveness. I'm David, part of the team that has worked to keep your family safe for years, he explained, eyes darting between Jake, Megan, and everyone else in the room. Megan's breath quickened. How do you know about us? The past is alive. It's dangerous. But it's time to embrace our truth, all of it. David stepped back with a grim resolve, his voice laced with urgency. Please, we have to move. What's so dangerous? Laura pressed, stepping forward now, every bit the support they needed. David sighed deeply, eyes haunting. Your family is intertwined in something much larger than any of you know. Your mother, Jake, is not just running from her past, she's running to protect you from people who want to end it. Shock rang through Jake like a bell. He blinked hard, processing the reality teetering before him. End it? What do you mean? They're coming for the truth, David urged, his intensity sharpening. You have the power to change your family's fate, but you need to decide, are you ready to face the truth? Jake exchanged looks with Ethan, who stood silently beside him, filled with courage. We're ready, Ethan said, voice clear and steady, proud of his father. I need to know everything, Jake finally said, courage rising within him like a tide. Then we must go. Right now. David nodded, urgency thickening the air around them. Can we just leave everything behind? Megan's voice trembled, a crack in her seemingly fearless facade. It's the only way to ensure your safety and your family's truth. Taking a deep breath, Jake turned and addressed the friends he had come to trust. We can't run forever. Truth isn't something to fear, it's what will bring us together. With hands shaking slightly, Jake held out his hand, willing to take that leap. Who's with me? Everyone stepped forward, the line of support anchoring him as they glanced from one another, an ensemble bound by shared trials and emerging hope. As the foundation of their relationships continued to mature, each person whispered one confirming word, together. And just like that, Jake felt the warmth of transformation shimmer in the air as they stepped forward into an uncertain future, ready to reclaim their lives and forge a path encased in honesty. With renewed resolve, Jake understood that family, however fractured, could heal. There were still secrets to untangle, but in this moment, they were united, a coalition of love willing to brave the path ahead. Each heartbeat was steadying, a promise radiating through him. The truth was the beginning of something beautiful. Now, it's time to take charge. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach even more hearts. Comment your reactions and feelings about this inspiring ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to join our wonderful community. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.